1992, Bill Clinton did it, and John F. Kennedy did it back in 1960. President Obama, of course, is in Florida this morning trying to capitalize on his convention momentum. We said the same thing about Mitt Romney last week, right after their convention. It just illustrates how important and how close the race is there, and that's why we're focusing on Florida this weekend. Joining me now, as they do every Saturday, is CNN contributor Maria Cardona and Amy Holmes, anchor for GBTV's Real News. We'll get to Florida in just a moment as we get ready for the president's appearance coming up here live on CNN. But first, Maria, let's start with you this morning. Let's take a quick look back at the Democratic convention. We know that lots of folks say Michelle Obama knocked it out of the park. Bill Clinton and Barack Obama were no slouches either, of course. So who, other than someone named Clinton or Obama, really impressed you?
I think that one of the other speeches that really stuck out for me, and I know was a big hit at the convention and with folks around the country, was our keynote speaker, the first Latino ever for a DNC keynote speaker, Julian Castro. And he really, I think, impressed the crowd, not just with his personal story, but with his argument about how his personal story was not just a quintessential American story, but it was a story that was possible only in this great country, and that the opportunities that were available to him to make him successful are the opportunities that are at stake in this election, and that it was Barack Obama's policies that he's put in place and will continue to put in place to make sure that that American dream that he is now fulfilling is going to be available to everybody, regardless of how much money you make, where you come from, what family you were born into, because that is the quintessential American story, and we want to make sure that that continues for generations to come. Yeah, I thought it was an amazing speech.
It was also nice to see his mom sitting there and looking on as well. Very
and his
moment.
Daughter.
Yeah,
his
really,
daughter, I think, was the big,
very
the big rock star there. Yeah.
Amy, who did you like?
Well, I always like, as Marie was talking about, politicians who talk about the American dream and up by the bootstraps and what's great about this country. But I have to say, I really sort of loved Jennifer Granholm. I love my politics rowdy. I love my politicians off the cuff. I was watching this, and it was sort of this growing sense of disbelief that it was getting bigger and bigger. Some were saying it was a Howard Dean moment, but I love unscripted moments in politics, and that was certainly one of them.
Yeah, certainly. Amy, you're a registered independent. So looking at both conventions, who do you think did a better job in the end of selling themselves to the undecided voter?
You know, I think that's interesting. Usually, the roles are reversed, that Republicans sort of have their fringe elements that are getting people off message, and they're doing the post-convention cleanup with that. In this case, I think you saw the Democrats that were off message. You saw the fracas about taking God out of the platform, putting God back in. And I think for those reasons that maybe Republicans did a better job of staying disciplined, on message, very targeted at independent voters. And you heard with Mitt Romney's convention speech, towards voters who voted for Obama in 2008, but were disappointed with the president's performance, and he was trying to persuade those voters to switch tickets and move over to the GOP. We'll see if that pitch worked, but I think it looked like, honestly, that the Republican convention was far more tailored to that audience.
Yeah. Maria, what do you think?
Well, clearly I disagree with my friend Amy.
Really?
And I think, imagine that. I think the general consensus has been that it's actually the Democratic convention that was much more on message, that was much more talking specifically about what the Democratic Party is offering in this election cycle, the contrast, the stark contrast between a party who's going to be fighting every single day for the middle class, for the workers in this country, those who have been hardest hit by the recession, versus a Republican Party. And I think Amy's right in this part, that they were specifically tailoring their message to the very small enclave of those who actually believe the message that, if you trickle down, and going back to what Clinton said, they're doubling down on trickle down, and if your focus is on trickle down economics, that means that you're only there to help those who have been as prosperous as Mitt Romney. And so I think that that is not a message that is going to be resonating with swing voters, with women, with Latinos, with, frankly, the larger coalition of voters that Mitt Romney is going to need to win.
Let's talk about Florida. The president is in Florida. The latest CNN Time ORC poll has Obama with a 4-point lead in the state, but that's still too close to call, of course. So who has the advantage there, and how important is the state to the final tally. Maria, I'll start with you first on that one.
Sure. Well, to your point, it's a very, very close call right now. Obama is up by a couple of points, but that's within the margin of error. So I don't think that either candidate has a huge advantage right now. But I think moving forward, Obama is going to have the advantage in terms of the messages and specifically to the audiences that are so important in winning Florida. And I think coming out of the convention, for example, he can talk about Medicare. Clinton was beautiful in terms of really setting the record straight on where Medicare stands and the lies that Romney and Ryan have been perpetrating on that. And Latinos, let's talk about Latinos and where Mitt Romney is. I think that is going to be terrible for them in terms of their Latino message because they have none. Women as well, young people, folks who are losing their homes. Democrats are going to be reminding the people that Mitt Romney basically said that he wants the mortgage industry to hit bottom, and that's his fix.
Let me stop you there. I know you can keep going. Amy, what about you?
Well, interestingly, polling data showed that seniors in Florida actually liked Paul Ryan. They sort of think of him, I imagine, as their grandson if he had a little bit of ambition. And the push Granny off the cliff ad did not do well with those senior voters. I think, as Maria says, Florida is razor thin. It has been in past elections, as we well know. I think the home foreclosure crisis in Florida is something that could hurt Barack Obama, President Obama, who hasn't been able to turn that around in the last 4 years. But again, this is going to be, a slugfest, I think, down to November. And these issues, they cut both ways for both parties.
Yeah. We only have a minute left, so I really want to ask you this just very quickly. Amy, I'll start with you. Ann Romney, really trying to stay on message. When she gave this interview to this Iowa television station, she was asked about her views on same-sex marriage and about employer-provided health insurance and whether or not it should cover birth control. She kept pushing, let my husband handle that. I'm not going to make a comment about that. How do you think she handled that?
Well, I think that's a tough one for political wives. We know that Laura Bush, for example, she said that she was pro-choice, which was, contrary to her husband's position on this. I think where Ann Romney can really be an asset to Mitt Romney, and has been an asset to Mitt Romney, is helping Mitt Romney connect emotionally with voters. So when she deflected those questions, I don't know what her personal views are on that, but I don't think voters are going to be holding her accountable for those views.
And Maria, very quickly on that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, a candidate's wife is not the one who's pushing the policy. So I don't think it's fair to either criticize her for deflecting or frankly, criticizing her for not answering the question. So I think she did the right thing. I think that her asset is that she is a character witness for Mitt Romney, which right now he desperately needs. So she should continue to try to do that.
You always get that little dig in. All right. Well, listen, nice to see you both. Hopefully you'll be watching the president speak with us or speak on CNN. We'll be taking that speech live from Florida coming up a little bit later this hour. Maria Cardona, Amy Holmes, thank you both.
Thanks so much, Randy.
Serena Williams dominating her opponents, and now she's earned a trip to the finals of the U.S. Open. We will take you there live.